Today I would like to discuss a little bit about how to talk about Joseph Smith to Mormons. And I have been witnessing to Mormon missionaries, so I have more experience in doing that in the setting of my home than talking to other Mormons or if you have any family members that are Mormons. But here's some points to talk about. There's a lot of ways to talk about Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith is a very important part of the Mormon religion. He's the one who created it. But we need to make sure that as we talk to Mormons about Joseph Smith and about anything else, that we do it in love. And so one way to talk about Joseph Smith is to look at Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 5. And I think that this is a very good way to go about it, because we're focusing on the character of God here and how Joseph Smith taught a different God. And that's a very important thing to talk about. So Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 5 says, "If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder that he tells you comes to pass, and if he says, 'Let us go after other gods, which you have not known, and let us serve them,' you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you, to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. You shall walk after the Lord your God, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice. And you shall serve him and hold fast to him. But that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has taught rebellion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed you out of the house of slavery, to make you leave the way in which the Lord your God commanded you to walk. So you shall purge the evil from your midst." So if we can show from the Bible and from Joseph Smith's teaching that Joseph Smith taught us to go after other gods, then we should not listen to him as a prophet. So how does Joseph Smith's version of God line up with the Bible? And I hope to show that this is actually a completely different God. So I'm going to be reading from the King Follett Discourse, which was a sermon delivered by Joseph Smith. And in it he says these things: "God himself was once as we are now, and is an exalted man, and sits enthroned in yonder heavens." Later on he says, "In order to understand the subject of the dead, for consolation of those who mourn for the loss of their friends, it is necessary we should understand the character and being of God, and how he came to be so. For I am going to tell you how God came to be God. We have imagined and supposed that God was God from all eternity. I will refute that idea and take away the veil so that you may see. These ideas are incomprehensible to some, but they are simple. It is the first principle of the gospel to know for a certainty the character of God, and to know that we may converse with him as one man converses with another, and that he was once a man like us, yea, that God himself, the Father of us all, dwelt on an earth, the same as Jesus Christ himself did, and I will show it from the Bible." And of course, that idea of God cannot be defended from the Bible. But Joseph said, "We have imagined and supposed that God was God from all eternity. I will refute that idea and take away the veil so that you may see." But Psalm 90, verse 2, actually plainly teaches that God has always been God. So if we look at that psalm here, it says in verse 2, Psalm 90, verse 2, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." So that is the plain teaching of the Bible, and Joseph contradicted that in this sermon. And also in Acts 14, Paul and Barnabas are in a certain place, and the people want to worship them as gods. But in response to this, Paul and Barnabas say to them in verse 14 of Acts 14:15, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news, that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them." So in this passage, they're talking about how they are men of like nature with you, indicating by doing that in response to them seeking to worship them as gods, they're saying, we are of like nature with you. We're not of the nature of the gods. And so God is a different nature than man. He never was once a man and is now God. So I hope that you can hopefully look up even more Bible verses and see how the God of Joseph Smith is different than the God of the Bible. And thus we should not revere Joseph Smith as a prophet.